Well, we keep going. We're going to move on to a happier subject. I kind of wish Cracker Barrel was here. We're going to be having Marci Gutteberg and Keith Willard join us virtually. They are, I believe, in Fort Lauderdale area, wedding invitation event planning. I think that is back on the books.
I think people are getting married again.
Hi, everyone. How you doing? Hi, Marci. Hi, Keith. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's great to be on.
Marci, we just need you to turn on your audio. We hear Keith, we just don't hear Marci.
Hello.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you so much for having us today.
It's a pleasure. Are you both in Fort Lauderdale?
We are.
Yeah.
Well, Keith, tell us, you do event planning and Marci does invitations, correct?
Correct. So
Marci?
I'm an event planner and the president of the local chapter of NACE, which is the National Association of Catering and Events. Marci Guttenberg is the immediate past president, so I took on her role, and both of us host a weekly podcast called Behind the Veil. So it's awesome. We have a great teamwork down here.
Behind the veil, I love that. That is so cool. Now, has event planning for weddings, they've changed, obviously. Everything has been shrunk down to size. Do you see a change again now that more people are getting shots and things of that nature? Has the waters warmed? Is it a little bit different? Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are still doing it like always.
No, they're definitely not doing it as always. I mean, socially distant practices. For, March 13th was kind of our last major event that happened here in South Florida. Mm-hmm. And then starting back in about October, events started coming back, but cautiously, with lots of different pieces and parts being put into place, especially socially distant. But how they're invited, I'm going to leave up to Marci, because that's actually the very first part of any type of wedding, is the invitation and the process of having to change of date. So I'm going to turn that over to Marci.
And I think our crew, you guys, we have email. They sent us some pictures, so let's put up a quad and we can go through those also. But Marci, how are people being invited now?
So when everything did shut down, we actually had a lot of scrambling to do. Keith had a lot of scrambling to do. We all had to reschedule, and people were sending out, cancellations, or they were contacting all of their guests to advise them of the updates, or putting them on a website and sending out e-blasts. Right now, people are doing more of a hybrid event that might go on for a little while, depending on how the COVID restrictions start lifting up and how people are reacting to the vaccines. And so people, I'm sorry?
What's a hybrid event?
A hybrid event is something that has a virtual component in addition to the on-site event. So that way they can interact, or at least watch and see what is going on and be a little bit, involved in some way, shape, or form.
So think of it as a Zoom call, but with the wedding in the background. So, we've been able to, obviously, before COVID, nobody even understood Zoom calls or even this virtual world, really. And Zoom has now become part of everybody's daily life. And so now we've integrated that into the weddings themselves. And so that way people near and far can be involved. And it's something that's never going to go away, because one of the things that we learned is that, it's a great opportunity to involve everybody in the wedding, regardless of either financial difficulties or health difficulties. Even in the future, when we go back to normal, quote unquote, I think the Zoom component will consistently be a part of it.
You see that changing. Can you guys give
and so, sorry,
please, with the email?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you that well.
You've seen that changing. So this is one of the pictures that, Keith, you sent.
Yes.
Is this?
Oh, okay. So, sorry, lower right corner. Yeah. So what you're seeing here is a wedding that we did in November. Originally, it was supposed to be inside the ballroom. And of course, because of COVID restrictions, we really needed to think outside of the box about what we could do in order to make sure that the wedding could continue. And so we went to the roof. Actually, you're looking at the roof of the Pelican Grand, a space that had never really been used for social events before. But because of COVID, we wanted to have an open air space that was still looking over this beautiful, beach area, because what you can't see is right past that railing is the beach. And so we tinted it with a clear tint and did some very simple lighting, but we were still able to do an incredible, over the top, beautiful wedding in the same location, just with a little twist of the logistics.
Look how beautiful. That's on the roof. Where's the Pelican Grand?
So the Pelican Grand is right on A1A, just near Oakland Park. So if you're in South Florida, it's in Fort Lauderdale, towards the northern end of Fort Lauderdale on the beach.
Between Oakland Park and Sunrise.
That
Yeah.
is beautiful. And Marci,
Yeah, like I said,
invitations
sorry.
are different also?
Invitations are different right now. I mean, for example, I'm going to actually show you one that I recently did for a client. It was for a bat mitzvah, and we did 2 different invitations. One which was for the on-site event, and they had an option of being off-site if they didn't choose to be present because of COVID. The other one was strictly for their virtual attendees only. So we did 2 different events. This one right here on this side here, this is strictly for the guests that are attending off-site only. And then this one right here, this was for the on-site and the choice of virtual. And then they had an evening, I don't know if you could see it, an evening event, or no, an afternoon event for the kids.
Are you seeing different changes in price point on events as well, that people are maybe, I remember when my kids had the bar and bat mitzvahs, what we spent on invitations was just like insanity. And then you realize, why are we doing this? Because, I mean, you know, the handmade, and then they're printed on the back. This was created by so-and-so. And you think, wow, for an invitation.
They're still doing it.
People are still doing this.
They're still doing it.
And that's your first impression. So,
Yeah.
like, you know, as many people say, you know, invitations, you know, maybe we should be a little bit more, you know, budget friendly when it comes to invitations. I say, you know, with the invitations itself, and Marci hopefully will agree with this, is that that's your very first kind of, what is this event going to be like?
And tell me, Taylor, let's change the picture. Events, this is beautiful.
I love this
Thank you.
picture.
Yeah, I do too. So this was Lola and Gary's wedding, the same one that we were just looking at, which was the rooftop. As you can see, it is a socially distant ceremony, yet it still feels very complete and very, you know, it doesn't feel like makes people feel separate. It's still very all-consuming and allows everybody to be a part of the overall experience. And of course, it's on the beach, so you know it's very difficult to have a bad ceremony on the beach. But again, socially distant, but yet it didn't feel like it was odd. It felt very much part of the norm. And that's the struggle. You know, that's the struggle. It's being able to still do these weddings and be able to balance the joy of everybody, the comfort of everyone, because everybody has different kind of comfort levels when it comes to COVID. Some people are like very much, I need a mask, I need to stay 10 feet away, not just 6 feet, but 10 feet away, and I don't want to be in an enclosed area. While others are like, bring it in, give me a hug, you know, no mask. And so being able to balance a wedding with all of those different types of personalities is become part of our norm, seriously. And for this particular wedding, actually, the mother of the groom did not feel comfortable staying for dinner. So she came to the ceremony. We worked into the schedule that she was able to do a speech towards the beginning of the dinner, and then she left. But we made it, we did it in a way that it didn't feel odd or random. And honestly, people didn't even realize that she had left the party until much later.
Are you seeing the same amount of time from getting engaged to the wedding? Because lately what I've seen is a much shorter engagement.
Yeah. So and Marci can talk about the invitation process on such a short experience. But I have a wedding
because I've seen 2 weddings this weekend of people who have kids my kids' ages. I'm thinking weddings already. I just think I saw the engagement a couple months ago on social media, and then you start thinking, well, we all think, right, is she pregnant? But I don't even think that's the case. I think it's just, I don't know what it is. All of a sudden, everyone got married this weekend.
She's pregnant?
Well, right, remember you had like a shotgun wedding?
Actually,
I have nothing to do with that comment. Sorry.
That's funny. Well, actually, this picture that you have up, the bride here is actually 4 months pregnant.
Of course she is. And bada bing, there you have it.
We had to change her dress a little bit, but yeah. So weddings, like I have a wedding at the Ritz-Carlton in Belle Harbor on March 13th, so just in a couple of weeks, and we have 75 days to pull it together. And Marci obviously is tasked with creating these invitations in a very quick way. And so I'll defer to
Yeah.
Marci.
Yes. I mean, so like, for example, with Lola and Gary's wedding, the one that you see in the picture here, we did something very ethereal because it was beach, it's a beach wedding. So this was the invitation, it was all a rose gold kind of lettering
Yeah,
and
beautiful.
a white invitation. It's just, I mean, you really have to take into consideration the client's, not just the budget, but the style of the event that they want to prepare, put forward for their guests. You also want to showcase the fact that where they're having it, and you want to set the right tone, because you want the guests to know what they're walking into and how to dress, and what their expectation is all set by the invitation, because it's the first tangible item that they get in hand before the event day.
You know,
can be
I
very
got to tell you, I have to compliment you guys on the creativity of this, because yesterday we had done an event at a park and I felt different. If I'm going to a wedding at a beach, I feel different. I feel like it's okay to be at a wedding. You know, you go to the indoor weddings and maybe they have 20 people and you're beginning to look around saying, is this okay? But this whole scenario on the beach, I mean, I don't know how big of a beach you can get, but there's a lot of things you can change the creativity on this thing and do a luau or do volleyball. All of a sudden, it isn't about putting on and spending a ton of money on clothes. You're going to be maybe dressing rooms where you change into a Hawaiian shirt and stuff. I just love this. I think this is amazing.
Well,
Right.
and one of the things that comes up a lot actually is how do you get across COVID safety on an invitation? And we just did a whole show about this, actually, is about how do you make sure that your guests understand what is going to be happening, what kind of safety protocols are in place, and even kind of the current, like, what are the restrictions in the county. And so Marci spoke on this. So again, I'm going to defer to Marci for that, because
Okay.
she really was the expert when it came to, that communication.
So with COVID, there are so many, restrictions and guidelines that, either the community, the county, or the state puts forth, and it's up to the event planner like Keith to put together all of the details for being on site. Beforehand, there's a few ways to go about it. You can either put it on an enclosure card, or I would recommend maybe doing a website and directing your guests to the website. And this way you can put as much detail as you want if you do the website, whereas an enclosure card, there's only so much real estate on a card. There's just an opportunity to let them know what they're walking into, don't be surprised, this is what's going to be asked of you. Some people will take it as far as either testing their guests on site or having them do a test beforehand and providing documentation and so forth. So there's just a multitude of ways that different couples are going through the process at this point. And it's up to us to find out what are they wanting to do, how do they want to handle it.
And what I loved is that she brought up on the show is that put all the COVID restrictions or any of that COVID information on a separate insert, so that your invitation is then saved for prosperity without having to include COVID notifications in it, which I thought was just a lovely idea, because why not? Because years from now, you're going to be looking at that invitation, and do you really want to see COVID-19 across your main invitation? Probably
True.
not.
So a separate enclosure card. And having you do this event planning, but I'm telling you, what I've seen is, I saw one wedding that was at a plantation over the weekend that looks absolutely spectacular. And then I saw another wedding that looked like it was a little more low-key locally, with just immediate family. And, you saw the bride and groom going through, I guess, the sparklers as they walked through. But I'm telling you, honest to goodness, I remember seeing the engagements during COVID. Your mind frame is like when you saw them all posted. And I think they're happening quicker and quicker.
They really are. I mean, that's the thing, is that people are done. People are tired of waiting, to be honest. They've waited so long to get married, and people put off all of this joy and love and anticipation for 6 months, a year. And now they're ready to move forward, but they're not just ready to move forward, they're ready to move forward quickly. They already have a very clear idea of what their wedding is going to be looking like because they've been thinking about it for a year. And so now they're like, let's go, done, let's move forward. 3 months, great.
It makes it a whole, look at this rooftop. Is this the rooftop?
It is. So this is a
Yes.
daytime shot, so that way you
Gorgeous
can
that
really
is.
see the difference. Yeah.
And you put all of this together.
Correct. So I do everything from the tent, the flowers, to the linen, to the chairs, to the location, to the photography. So I help them find a photographer that fits in their budget, that makes sense, because everybody has different budgets. Not everybody has a Kim Kardashian budget, because that's just not the world that we live in. You got to make sure that people can still afford their house, that they can still afford their car without putting money on credit cards, because telling you right now, if you put money on a credit card, I will personally come after you, because smack you for that 23% interest. Who wants to do that? So, you got to be careful about people's budgets and making sure that they fit in. And one of the things that, with Marci and I, we've developed a very strong connection with our clients in making sure that we honor their limits and their budgets and, where they're coming from, to ensure that they not only have an amazing time doing the wedding, but they don't look back at it with regret, especially with financial regret. And that is the key.
That is the key.
Can you do it on a small budget? What's a small budget for a wedding?
Well, it depends on the number of people. It really does. At the end of the day, most budgets are going to be based on your number of guests. So if you have 150 guests, don't assume that you're going to be able to do it on a small budget. You just can't. If you have 30 guests, absolutely, 100%. But that also comes with invitations. So the less amount of invitations that you have, the smaller the cost is going to be.
True that too.
And it's interesting, if you got 150 and you want a small budget, you cut it down to 30.
Well, now I think
100%.
People probably can. Maybe now's a good time. You can say, you know what, we can't have this many people. We're going to keep it smaller. And then, like Jay Farrow did, one of our hosts for a long time. He got married and it got postponed a couple times because of COVID. And finally he said, I'm not waiting anymore. They did it at
Right.
Vizcaya. It was a lot smaller. I can't
Yep.
tell you his budget was less, because then they had multiple bands and they had multiple food stations. But then there was the streaming side. And he just said, I can't. The venue was even more because I went to Vizcaya, but it was a more intimate event. You and I weren't there, so it was
Well,
more intimate.
and that's the thing, is that we're finding that guests are expanding on their experience per person.
Yeah.
So before, where you would have 150 people, you might be able to afford a salad, entree, cake, wedding cake, so to speak. If you cut that down to 30, but your budget still remains fairly similar, you get to do a lot more. I mean, the experience of having the same budget for 150 versus 30, there's just so much more that can happen, and so many more intimate moments.
Look how distant everyone is. This is the most interesting seating arrangement. Everyone just kind of sits where they want.
Well, and this is, the seats were actually placed 6 feet apart and then 6 feet in front and back. So
Wow.
It was done like a grid. So what you're seeing here is actually the aisle of the ceremony. But of course, it looks very different because of the angle of the camera. But
Interesting.
again, gorgeous skyline, gorgeous photos. You're not going to look back at this photo and think COVID. You're going to look back at this photo and think, oh my God, gorgeous location. Look at that sunset.
Amazing.
And
So, Marci,
something to be said about the invitation, I would, recommend anything to do with the word COVID, leaving it off of your invitation and putting it on a separate card. Because when they look back at the invitation down the road, they don't need to necessarily think about COVID. They can think about their experience.
it's incredible. Is it still 6 weeks lead time on invitations? to the
6
event?
weeks. No, sometimes you can actually get them a little less than that. I can usually get them within a 4-week time frame, up to 3 months or more, depending on the complexity of it, whether it's custom, artwork, and so forth. But usually, I could usually get them out within a 4-week time frame.
Incredible.
And so, by the way, the photo that you have up is actually, if you look at the top of the hotel, that blue area, that's actually where the wedding took place. So it shows where the roof of the building, just to give you an idea of where it was located in the hotel.
See, I like the creativity. I mean, I've been married a couple of times. I've gone to 100 weddings, and it's always been in the enclosed area. But because of Florida, you're able to do different things. I like the creativity. Having people involved in things that are fun is kind of cool. I know somebody that did a wedding on a beach, and they had tuxedo shirts. Not a tuxedo.
T-shirts?
Tuxedo T-shirts with shorts and flip-flops. And they went on the beach. They put a dance floor on the beach. Big dance floor so you could spread out. They brought a band in. They had a DJ. I don't know how the hell they did all that. I guess they were running lines. And my goodness gracious, they had, and then it went to dark and they had the torches. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
The fun was unbelievable. They didn't leave until it was over, which was really strange in my day anyway.
Well, my own wedding actually was done on a glass bottom boat because I wanted, as a wedding planner, I had so many people that were wanting to be involved with it. So I knew that I needed to find a location that would allow me to be able to tell people, I'm sorry, I had to make some really difficult choices because of the size of the venue, which is a great excuse, by the way, for anybody out there that is looking to downsize their wedding. Blame it on the size of the venue. But anyway, so I had it on a glass bottom boat because why not? If you have people coming in from all over the country to Florida, one of the things that they're going to want to do is do something touristy. So why not incorporate it and have some fun with your wedding? It doesn't have to be always so serious.
I love
amazing.
that.
I want to take a commercial break.
That's the fun part. They put a volleyball set in the water. So the water was around their knees, and they were playing volleyball in the ocean.
I can see Gio doing that.
It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life, but man, did they have fun.
That's what it's all about. Can you guys stay with us? Because when we come back, I want to hear about your podcast.
Yes,
Oh, absolutely.
All right, let's take a commercial break. When we come back, more with, what's it called? Behind the Veil.
Thank you.
Behind the Veil. Never give up hope. You too could get married again, Batman.
We're going to commercial.
And we'll be right back.
Yeah, creativity of weddings, isn't that
I love
like,
the rooftop idea. That was pretty cool.
You've never been to a rooftop wedding?
Well, we've got Marci and Keith with us. Not a rooftop that's never been prepared for a wedding.
Oh,
They
well,
created this, which is remarkable.
That's true. That's true. That's a little bit different.
Right? I just remember on the roof in my dorm room.
Do you remember
with my silver getting suntanned at University of Miami. That's what I did on the rooftop.
Do you remember the
Lounge chair like
the
this.
craziest wedding you were ever at? Craziest wedding.
I remember going to, it's all different. We had friends who lived up in Deal, New Jersey, in Brooklyn, and then Deal for the summer, and they would go there for the weddings, and they would have like 1,000 people, and there'd be 100 chairs. So it was like musical chairs, and they just assumed that people were going to come and go. So different cultures. It's totally different. In Jewish religion, you always call the wedding for 30 minutes before. When you're Jewish and you're Sephardic, it's like a 3-hour difference in window.
You called the wedding.
So like if the wedding you wanted to start at 7:30, when the clock's moving up, you call it for like 7.
What does that mean?
It means on the invitation it says 7, but you're really not going to maybe start till 7:40 to get people to come in. But that was kind of the most interesting, is when there's not enough chairs or tables, because culturally it's different. People just come and go.
Right.
There's not enough tables.
Well,
what?
Well, no, and for these weddings, actually, you would do a cocktail reception ahead of time to draw people there, because we've run into that before, where people are like always late, but they're never late for an open bar. So you open up, you do an open bar ahead of the wedding, get everybody there, do the wedding, and then you do the party afterwards. So I would highly recommend that to anybody that has, a consistency with being late in their family. Do an open bar before the wedding. You'll be thrilled with the result.
Aren't all weddings have open bars? Aren't all weddings?
Not all.
Open bars?
Not all.
Sometimes it's a cash bar. And that's a really sad part of it. If somebody has a wedding that has a cash bar, it's not one of those that I would be ready to jump into going to, because I feel like that's a basic. I think that if somebody's going to give up their time, of their energy, you got to give them food and beverage without it costing them extra money, because it does cost people to be able to go to a wedding.
Yeah, even if you just make it wine and beer, if that's more budget friendly, at least they're getting something.
You've been to a cash bar?
No.
At a wedding?
No.
I would complain. I would say, wait a minute, who set this thing up? Are you kidding me? No, I never saw that
But
before.
I've been to one where they just serve wine or beer and not hard alcohol.
But I used to work for the hotel side of it. I was the director of catering for Ritz-Carlton and Hyatt Regency Pier 66. So I got to see all of it, all different budget levels, all different kind of like what people would want to try to do. And of course, it's not my job to complain about what other people are planning. So when I was on the hotel side of it, yeah, absolutely. There were a couple of weddings that they said they wanted to do a cash bar. I was like,
Me as well.
it's your wedding.
When
It's
were
your
you
wedding.
at?
But
When were you at?
But
Pier
ultimately-
66.
So I was at Hyatt Pier 66 10 years ago, and then I was at the Ritz-Carlton 5 years ago. So
Wow.
progression.
Marcy, what were you saying?
I was going to say, people have a little bit of a disillusion when it comes to beer and wine because the cost of a glass of beer or wine is ultimately close to the cost of a cocktail. So it's really, you're not really saving too much at that point.
And
So
people
if you're
really
gonna
worry
do
about
it, just go for it.
And
All right,
honestly,
so
if you want to save some money, do a consumption bar. So you're
That's
only
what's gonna
paying
say,
for the drinks
consumption
that are being
versus a
served.
flat fee. What do you recommend?
It depends on the
Depends
size
on
of the
number
wedding,
of drinkers.
and you know your family, you know your friends, you know they're big drinkers.
What's a consumption fee?
It's
What the hell is
basically
that?
it's basically a cash bar, but the difference is your guests are not paying cash. The bartenders are writing down how many drinks they are serving, and then you only pay for the number of drinks that were actually served. Versus an open bar, which is basically a flat fee for the whole night. Usually it's $15 to $20 an hour, and so if you feel like your guests are going to drink less than basically $20 an hour of drinks, then maybe a consumption bar might be something to think about. But to be honest, for ease of planning, I always try to push people to an open bar. I feel like that's an easier way because then you can get into arguments about how many drinks were actually served and did they overcount, and it becomes a whole thing.
And you know what you're getting into as well.
Puerto Rican bars,
Yeah.
we don't even count. He says, just back it up. My son's wedding, they took an ice sculpture. There were people drinking off of that.
Yeah, it would be you.
Well, it just looks so cool.
With your mouth, I remember
Well,
the
and-
pictures you guys sent me with your mouth at the bottom of the
I
funnel.
know. That was so stupid of us.
Oh, pre-COVID. That's totally pre-COVID.
Yes.
It was pre a lot of things that night. But I gotta tell you, I've never heard of restrictions like this. Close count this? Are you kidding me?
Well, if you figure based
Yeah.
on the price, 4 drinks per person, if you know most of your crowd isn't going to drink 4 drinks per person.
You know people who go to a wedding and have 4 drinks?
But that's sometimes what they charge you. So say maybe it's $60 an open bar on top of the
Yep.
food. I don't drink an
Well,
extra
and if you-
$60, but you do.
Well, and if average cost of your drink is $13 or $15, hotel pricing, I'm saying
Right.
hotel pricing, if you multiply that by four drinks or 5 drinks, does that equal, or is it greater than your $60 open bar? If it is, do an open bar.
Is it cheaper to have it on the beach with a bar? Just saying.
Well, it depends on the beach and it depends on the bar.
Well, tell us about your podcast, Marcy.
So actually, Keith is actually the brainchild of that project. We are, because we're involved with an association and we do a lot of work together outside of the association. Yep. We just wanted something that was going to bring some awareness to people in the community, whether it was business, professional people, or if they were going to be the couples that were going to be listening, and giving them some education and some outlet to hear about weddings and what can we do to help them overcome the process of COVID and move on, and whether they're booking a new date, whether they're changing the style of the event, anything to do with weddings. That's the show. I mean, and we have a great time. Every week it's something different topic, different guests. And it's just really exciting.
When does it air?
And we started it. I actually started, the whole idea was that for, March 13th, like I said, was kind of the drop date for all these events. And about mid-April, I kept having my clients say, I don't know what I would have done without you because of all the different contract negotiations, the move dates, all of those things. And then I started thinking about, because we are a service organization, meaning NACE, National Association of Catering Events, name drop there. Because we're a service organization that is about educating our South Florida community, about educating our vendors down here that are part of the hospitality industry, I realized that there there were lots of couples out there that didn't have an event professional attached with them and basically had nowhere to turn for answers. So I got a group of people. Marci was one of the first, obviously, and then several other event planners, and we did a Zoom call that we pushed out onto Facebook Live, and we put out there people could ask us questions live. Well, it was hugely popular, and we had so many people. I mean, we must have had, I don't know, a couple hundred people tune in just on the very first Zoom call. And so we did it again. And then we did it again, and then we did it again. And then we started realizing that, the questions that were being asked were much more diverse than we could have ever anticipated. So then we did a show about mental health and wellness while planning during the age of COVID. And we had a psychologist on to answer those questions. Following that, we had an estate professional, a lawyer that does wills and estates, because there were people that had pushed off their wedding, that one of them got sick and unfortunately passed away, but then there was no protection for the surviving spouse because they weren't legally married yet. Wow. And so therefore they didn't have the same protections under the law. So that show was a little sad, but it was also very informative. And then we had lawyers on to talk about, what things you need to be looking out for in your contracts, and, what does a force majeure actually mean? Because there's multiple definitions of force majeure. And of course, a lot of people are dealing with that because of the COVID. And as this went on, we just kept, I just kept developing it even further. So we changed it from Zoom to StreamYard, which is our platform that we use every Tuesday. We increased the kind of ads that we were doing. We just made it a little bit more professional. And Marci was a big component of why we're actually still on air, because about show 18, I was like, why are we still doing this? Are we really reaching the audience that we should be reaching? Because we were reaching about 500 or 600 a week. And I literally had this moment of like, maybe we should stop. And Marci's like, no, please, are you kidding? This is the one thing I get to look forward to every week. It's a crappy time. And by episode 22, we had between 2,000 and 6,000 viewers. It dramatically jumped within a couple of shows. Yeah, so she made sure that we stuck it out.
And now we're on iHeartRadio, iTunes, and several other mediums to people to be able to get their podcast.
Pandora. Yeah, absolutely. So we have a YouTube channel that's, Keith Willard Events. So if you go to YouTube/C/Keith Willard Events, you'll see all of the past episodes of Behind the Veil. But then you can also look us up on iTunes or Pandora or Spotify for our podcast, because we now convert the show over to an audio file that is then pushed out. And it's always live, just like this. It's always live. So you never know what people are going to say.
Fantastic. Wow, that is tremendous. And how do people reach you as far as wedding and event planning and invitations? Marci?
So you can reach me at www.rsv as in Victor, P as in Paul, S as in Sam, the number 4, the letter U.com. And my company is An Affair to Remember by Marci. We actually recently did a show on trends, and I'll show you a few of the trends that some of your viewers will be able to kind of take with them today. And then I'll let Keith talk first.
Oh, well, it's super easy. It's KeithWillardEvents.com. Everything's Keith Willard. So if you go to any of my social media, it's all at Keith Willard. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc. It's all at Keith Willard. Or at info@KeithWillardEvents.com, or look us up on Behind the Veil on YouTube, iHeart, and Pandora.
Awesome. Thank you guys both so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Great. And
do you want to do a couple of invitations just for some trends?
We got about 2 minutes.
Okay,
Two
so
minutes.
just to give you an idea. So the colors for the year that Pantone puts out right now is Illuminating, which is a bright yellow, and Ultimate Gray, which is great. But down in Florida, we have the ocean. And the ocean color, the blue colors, those are going to be super hot this year. Also, just to kind of give you a little bit of, these are gorgeous invitations. This was done, actually, this was one of Keith's clients that they did down at the Ritz no, I'm sorry, the Biltmore. Excuse me. This is the Biltmore. And as you can see, it's got a very sparkly edge. It's a beautiful invitation. As is, this one is gorgeous. It's an acrylic.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, this one is really pretty.
Beautiful.
And then, you've got the matching envelopes. But, they really, you can get them in any style. The biggest trend of coming up this year is watercolors and flowers. So just to kind of give you, I don't know if you can see this one or not.
Beautiful. Wow.
That's
But
gorgeous.
watercolors are big. Flowers are very, very big for this year. I mean, that is the hottest trend. There's also a little bit of nostalgia coming in from the 70s. A little bohemian is coming back in. But those are going to be super hot this year.
Awesome. Wow. Thank
And
you
it's
guys
great
so
because
much.
they
And-
go along with the events
Thank
that
you,
are
thank
outdoors.
you so much for joining us. We got to take a
Thank you.
commercial break. Keith Willard,
Thank you.
Marci Guttenberg, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you
Behind the veil.
Love being on the show, guys. You're amazing.
so much.
Let's take a commercial break. When we come back, chit chat with our friend Michelle. Sure. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.